Today, we're taking a look at SIRUI's brand new 40mm Autofocus Anamorphic Lens. Full disclosure, SIRUI has sent me this lens to try out. However, as always, all thoughts and opinions are my own. This isn't a super technical review. I'm sure there are plenty of other channels that will cover that information. With that said, let's get into it. So this is SIRUI's first autofocus anamorphic lens. It's been designed for Super 35 format, or APS-C. The focal length is 40mm, so this works out to be roughly 42mm on a full frame horizontally. The aperture can open up to T1.8, and you have the option to declick it if you choose. The filter thread on this lens is 77mm. You have two options as well when it comes to the anamorphic flares: a blue flare for classic anamorphic streaks, and a more neutral flare. The overall construction of the lens feels very solid, but it still feels relatively lightweight at roughly 614 grams. While not necessarily intended for use on a full-frame camera, I'll be using this with the FX3, so the focal length will be slightly different to what you would see when you use it with an APS-C camera. Let's do a quick unboxing to see what you actually get with the lens. Firstly, you have the strap for the carrying case. The carrying case itself is really nice, although I can't say I often use these, but it's good that they include this. Then of course, you have the lens. The one I have is for Sony E-mounts. As with all anamorphic footage, you will have to de-squeeze it in post-production. To correctly preview the footage while actually recording, I recommend using an external monitor. You can use the built-in anamorphic de-squeeze that comes with cameras like the FX3. However, at the moment, you are unable to use this with the autofocus, which is a shame. You actually have two color flare options to choose with this lens: the classic blue or a more neutral tone. In these examples, I'm showing the blue version. I think this is something you really need to consider when choosing which version of this lens to get, as depending on the style of footage you want, one may be more useful than the other. You can, of course, alter the color in post-production, but it's always better to get it right in camera first when you can. This lens opens up to T1.8, so it's great in low light, and you do get those signature anamorphic oval bokeh. One thing I will mention though, is that at T1.8, you will see the hexagonal elliptical bokeh. When you stop down to roughly 2.8, you will notice the transition to the more signature 1.33 elliptical shape. One of the things I really enjoy about this lens being autofocus is that it gives you a really unique photography option. Of course, you can use manual focus anamorphic lenses for the same thing, but this makes it so much easier. The minimum focus distance is roughly 2 feet. So if you want to get those super close-up shots with this lens, as with my previous anamorphic video, I'd highly recommend some macro diopters. These allow you to get super close while maintaining those anamorphic qualities. In terms of pros and cons, so for the pros, you of course have the fact that this is an autofocus anamorphic lens. What more can I say? It's relatively affordable when you compare it to other anamorphic lenses, and the image quality you get out of this looks great. Some potential cons? Interestingly, the autofocus. It's not as fast as what you may be used to with some other lenses. However, if your subjects aren't moving super fast, it's just fine. There is some hunting from time to time, but you do get used to it. I also expect this can possibly be updated with firmware at some point. And on that note, if you're using a Sony camera like me that has anamorphic de-squeeze built in, you can't use the autofocus when this is turned on, which is a shame. Again, this may change with a firmware update. For now, this lens may just be ahead of its time. For still photography, this isn't really a problem, as I find shooting stills before the squeeze isn't really an issue when using the frame guidelines. Overall, this is a really solid pick for a lens if you're looking to get into anamorphic shooting, particularly if you do a lot of work on your own like me. The autofocus on an anamorphic really is a fantastic feature to have, and I'm looking forward to seeing more and more lenses like this. As always, if you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. And if you'd like to see more videos like this, you can subscribe here or carry on watching one of these videos. I look forward to seeing you next time. Take care.